Good evening, everyone. And my phone's going to go off now. So. All right, I would like to call the meeting to order at exactly 5:30. Our Sergeant at Arms, Rob Tate, will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
Thank you, Madam President. If you would all please stand and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated, and those on Zoom, please stand up. No, I'm just joking.
You gotta give it a 3 count.
3 count?
Yeah, remember after we make all the noise. Again.
Oh, it's the clapping part. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
No, you were. Oh, you were? Okay, sorry about that.
What I get to attention in the future.
Right here.
I know the president was going to introduce the Sasser, so I'm going to go ahead and just step back in, given that I'm assuming that role this evening. And I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. I do not believe that we have, actually we do have one change on the agenda. I think our grammarian is absent tonight. Selena, would anyone care to take on that role at the 11th hour? Kathleen, would you be able to possibly come up with a word today?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to, in place of Selena as the grammarian, it'll be Kathleen McNulty. I do not believe that we have any other changes. And I also have the joke of the day. Oh, did you bring one? Would you like to do yours? I can reserve mine for another time.
I think so, because it made me laugh.
Okay. Please welcome Pat with the joke of the day.
Okay. I hope you don't find it too vulgar. An older lady was standing at the railing of a cruise ship, holding her hat in her hand so the wind wouldn't blow it away. A gentleman approached her and said, "Pardon me, ma'am. I don't mean to be forward, but did you know that your dress is blowing up in the wind?" "Yes, I know," said the lady, "but I need my hands to hold on to my hat." "But madam," he said, "you must know that your derriere is exposed." The woman looked down and then back up at the man and said, "Sir, anything you see down there is 85 years old, but I just bought this hat."
Very good. Thank you, Pat. Thank you for that visual. All right. As we move on, I would like to introduce the next member of this evening's program, our general evaluator. Please welcome back Pat Whitfield.
All right, thank you very much. Have a wonderful evaluation team, beginning with Lloyd Smith, who will be the evaluator for Jackie's speech. Lloyd.
Tonight, Jackie's going to be doing a project I don't think we've seen before from anybody. It's something called cross-cultural understanding. And this is level 2 of what path are you on, Jackie? I forgot.
Strategic relationship.
Strategic relationships.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. The purpose of this project is for the member to identify his or her own cultural identities and the stereotypes that impact others' perceptions of him or her. There are lots of different ways this can be done. This should be interesting. As I say, I don't think anybody in our group has done this one before. Her time limit or time is 5 to 7 minutes.
Thank you very much. The next member of this stellar team is Christina Stecker, who is going to be the timer.
Thank you, Madam General Evaluator. This evening, I will be timing the speech, which is 5 to 7 minutes. Also table topics, which are 1 to 2, and the evaluation, which is 2 to 3. Last week, when we were watching from a distance, the papers were so large that it covered the face of the speaker from outside. So we're going to try this, and I don't know if it will work. This may be too small. Green will be at 5 minutes. 6 minutes will be yellow. 7 minutes will be red. For table topics, it will be 1, 1.5, and 2. Evaluation will be 2, 2.5, and 3. And I'll report when called upon to do so. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes,
Does Christina need to be there to order to be able to see him?
No, she can see her from that.
Okay.
Can you see that, Jackie?
Perhaps if Christina moved on the other side of Eric towards the camera that's facing, we might be able to see him a little bit better. Yep, in that chair right there. Yep. Oh, right there. Good. There we go. Yep.
okay, so we have the matter of the timer settled. Now we have our grammarian, and Kathleen very bravely stepped in to fill the void and has come up with a wonderful word of the day. We can hardly wait to hear what she has to say.
Thank you. The word of the day. I'm going to be the grammarian. The word of the day is conflate. I've heard this word a lot lately. It means to, mix together different elements. Synonyms are blend, coalesce, combine, commingle. An example, it is likely that he conflated 2 or 3 in Revere's portrait. They also conflate lots of Mr. Stingle's interest while at the same time seeming like something new, at least for him. That was from the New York Times. The word of the day is conflate. In addition to keeping track of the word of the day, I will have the great honor of listening for excellent speech, interesting words, and clever uses of phrases. Thank you.
All right, and last but by no means least is our awe counter, Eric.
Mr. General Evaluator. I will be counting Oz, which are the filler words. Oz owns errors, and also starting sentences inappropriately with and, well, or also but those like, you know, repetitions. I've got a handy little schedule here. Everybody's name's written down, and I will give a report when called upon.
Yes, you have a question? Christina?
That's on.
Your cursor.
There it is.
Okay, have we taken care of that technological issue? In that case, I happily turn over the podium, imaginary podium, to our Toastmaster, Rob Hill.
Hello, everyone. I'm back. Tonight it's my privilege to introduce our guest speaker. Her speech is from the Level 2 that is unique to the strategic relationship pathway, and it is called the Intercultural Communications Project. Jackie has always been interested in other cultures from her undergrad classes called Intercultural Communication and Deaf Across Cultures, to her love for travel, ignited during her studies in London and Italy. Part of intercultural communication, though, is understanding one's own culture as well. Please welcome Jackie Graybill with her speech entitled Cultural Explorations. Cultural Explorations by Jackie Graybill.
There's a lot you can tell about me just from seeing me and from hearing me speak one sentence. You can tell that I'm female. You can tell that I'm white. You can tell I'm probably somewhere in my 30s, but you might not be able to tell that I am divorced, that I was homeschooled, or that I came from an evangelical Christian background. So many elements in my history create my culture. If you listen to me, you can also tell that I am not from New York or from the deep South. You might make assumptions about who I am based on just seeing me and hearing me speak. But the interesting thing is, how much do I look at my own cultural background and see how it's affected me and how it has brought me to where I am today? When I was 29, I moved from Seattle to Nashville. That was a cultural change, let me tell you. The interesting thing, though, is when I traveled back home for the first time, I noticed things that I had never noticed before because I had been living in a different place. Certain things stood out starkly. I understood when I entered the Seattle airport, SeaTac airport, what people meant when they said the Seattle freeze. People are not as friendly in Seattle as they are in Nashville. Recently, I have moved to the UK. When I went back home after living in the UK, I noticed some different things as well. I have a list going of Britishisms, things that British people say that I think are so fun and fascinating, from things I probably shouldn't say on here to cute things like bits and bobs. I'm going to have a lie-in. They're the surface level aspects of the culture, but it's interesting going back, seeing different aspects of my own culture in a different light. Recently, I had lunch with a Toastmaster friend from the UK, and we were talking about her trip to Seattle. And she said she found it fascinating because everyone she talked to them for a couple minutes, and then they started talking about one of the two things you were never supposed to talk about: politics. Every single person she met asked her where she was on the political spectrum, which she found interesting because British people don't typically talk about their politics. Another aspect that British people don't typically talk about is their religion, the other of the two things you're never supposed to talk about. Living in Nashville, there was a church on every corner. Seattle Starbucks was like Nashville churches. So when I would meet somebody in Nashville, they would automatically ask, "Oh, what church do you go to?" It was just a part of the culture. Interestingly enough, the two things that I now see as so divisive in my American culture don't seem to be at play in the UK. And it's interesting just to compare and contrast. I recently went to a church, visited a church here in the UK. It wasn't evangelical. It was the Church of England, and I wasn't sure what to expect. It was in this beautiful church. It looked to me like a cathedral. Probably they wouldn't call it a cathedral because it wasn't big enough. But one word that kept coming to my mind from this whole experience was refreshing. It was refreshing. The worship team was refreshing. They didn't dress like hipsters. They didn't have lights and fog, and it wasn't about the show. They sang my favorite worship songs, and it was simple. The pastor, or as he's called over here, the vicar, gave a sermon about peace. It was refreshing. No one was vilified. No one was the enemy. It was so refreshing. When I think about my own culture in America, because they call it America, not the United States over here, which is also interesting. I think of how I grew up, and I think of a phrase used by a conservative radio show host. We live in the greatest nation on God's green earth. The greatest, the best. Yes, it's wonderful. There are a lot of wonderful things about it. But as I've started exploring, embracing my own curiosity about other cultures and other countries, I've realized it's not about who's the best, because we all bring beautiful elements of our culture into any interaction. Whether that's a different country, someone with a different skin tone, somebody that has a different culture than I do, even sitting in the room right now. We all have different cultures. But when we see those as assets and we appreciate the richness that those different experiences bring, that's when we have true intercultural communication that benefits all of us. In closing, I would like to invite all of us to next time we talk to somebody, no matter what they look like, what they sound like, let's bring our curiosity to bear and experience the culture that they were brought up in and experienced, for all the beauty and richness it can bring to the interaction. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. We're going to change things up just a little bit. We are not going to give everyone a minute to give comments back. We will do that after we do the evaluation, and we will have verbal critique from all of the people in the room after the evaluation. We're therefore going to go right on into table topics, and I would like to introduce our table topics master for this evening. Please welcome Steve Schwinn.
Thank you. Quite a crowd tonight. Looks like everybody might get to have 2 questions. Especially because I crafted some really fine ones.
Did you translate them?
I got it. Tonight's theme is serving others. It's got a little more meat to it than last week. I guess we'll just start off quick and easy. Vicki, what is it that you do to serve others? How do you go about it? What pursuit of serving do you employ?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. It's very interesting. My evolution of being a servant leader has changed, and the way that I look at it has changed. When I was first starting to be a servant leader, I didn't realize what it was that I was doing. I was just volunteering for my children's preschool or parent-teacher association, Boy Scouts of America. It's just one of those things that I wanted to do to be part of my children's lives. However, as I continued to do it, I realized that not only was it part of leadership, but I was serving the organization. And going through Toastmasters, that has really developed in my servant leadership, in that I really enjoy helping others go through the Toastmaster journey and learn about Toastmasters and serving our district the best that I can. And these past couple of years in higher leadership roles have been one that has tested me, but it's one that I have learned to grow and look forward to continuing to serve. And especially when I get into the role of immediate past district director, that's where it really helps, because that's where I'm more of a guide on the side, just helping those who are going through it, because I've already gone through it. Mr. Table Topics Master.
Thank you, Vicki. That's a great answer. Yes, everyone has a role here tonight, don't they? Pretty well. Thinking back to last week's meeting of getting your dues, do you believe in good karma or bad coming as a result of the service that you give or choose not to provide to others? Barbara, do you think that to be the case, that good karma will come your way or not, depending on your level of service or lack thereof?
Great question. So will karma come my way? Well, first of all, I just have to ask, answer, do I believe in karma? Not quite sure. Since I got the hard question on this. In my role of working for the library, I do serve our communities across 5 counties. I serve a number of different people. I help people find jobs. I serve those that have never used a library system from birth to death. I would say that working for the library system, yes, it's probably some good karma. It's certainly a very reputable and very trusted organization in society, both here and in Europe. It's well respected. And it's brought me a lot of joy working for the library system as well. But as for karma, that's a little bit tougher to answer. I definitely believe that serving others just you kind of produce your own karma when you are serving others and you're in that role. I don't just for the library, I also work for the Community Action Council. And I would also say what Vicki said, it kind of comes naturally when you have kids as well. They start volunteering for this and that, and then you realize I am actually serving for this community. And yes, I think that you produce your own karma. It makes you feel good. That's the best I got.
Great. Thank you. Would you prefer serving others with your time or with your financial resources or with a tennis racket, Eric?
Think you're a table topics master. A tennis racket.
Two others?
I got it. I wrote it down.
That's got to be a confirmation. I think that there's a mix, and I think probably I tried to get a healthy mix. It seems to me that actually time is more valuable than money or resources. And especially with your kids, your grandkids, they value you being around more in your life. So I like to do a mix. I volunteer for Young Life, and it's conflated because I give money and time. And this is too much stimulation. This meeting is conflated. But yes, I believe there should be a good balance, and I try and get a good balance, and depends on what the organization calls for. I will try and emphasize that. Excellent question, and I think this topic is a good topic. I think we really should be able to serve and think about serving in all that they do. Thank you for the question.
Thanks, Eric. When they're not completely amusing, it's certainly fraught with or filled with content. Well done. The U.S. has been serving others throughout the world over the many years that we've existed. Some say it's been self-serving. How do you feel about that? Have we been a good humanitarian country? Or are we just looking through rose-colored glasses, believing so, Kathleen?
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I'm going to conflate several of your questions. We'll start out by answering something that you asked earlier. It has to do with service. When I think about service, I think of my grandmother. We used to visit our grandmother every 2 years, 5 kids and 2 adults in the Studebaker, across a couple thousand miles between Washington, D.C. and Omaha, Nebraska. And when I got there, my grandmother amazed me. She served us the entire time we were there. She got up and she made everyone breakfast. She had all the meals, she made every meal. I never saw her sit down once at the table. She never even ate with us. She did not look overly thin or frail. She was eating somewhere sometime. Her whole life was about service. That was a great learning for me. And I've always kept that with me, and have tried in one way or the other to provide service to others. To circle around a little bit to your question, in general, I think that we serve others because we get something out of it. And it might be a feeling, a good feeling, you just feel good about something you're doing. It might be because it helps you in your business. It could be it helps you in your personal life. Some goal it may help you achieve. And inherently selfish. I think that's also true of us as a government and internationally. I suspect we rarely, if ever, do something that is only good for the other party. I don't think that's bad. I think as long as both parties feel that they're winners, it's a very good outcome. Mr. Table Topics Master.
That was deep. Well done, thank you. On a similar note, I listened to an interview of Ayn Rand, however you say that. She was speaking about why we do things. And it's for love of self. In her interpretation, we don't do things because we love other people or give a rip about them. In the end, we're really most interested in serving ourselves. I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. She kind of did a redundant theme, sort of like that huge book of hers, Atlas Shrugged. I think she could take about a third of that book out. The redundancy that seemed to be in there, in my view. Thinking about service to others, do you feel that you're truly putting out your altruistic interests to help others, or do you in fact have some self-serving interests through giving service?
That's a wonderful question, Mr. Topics Master. Thank you for reserving that for me. I've always been a firm believer in service above self. That was the whole reason I joined Rotary, was to give back to those less fortunate than myself. But service to others, to me, it goes beyond helping other people or helping animals. Pardon me. For example, this weekend, I volunteered up at Lake Chelan to help them with their glass repurposing program. They have a machine up there that will take glass and it will repurpose it into a material that can be used for a variety of purposes. It can be used to be an additive in road materials. It can be used on garden beds because it has properties that actually benefit the plants and shrubs in a garden. Another gentleman was using it to use as, he was putting in pavers in his backyard. So he was using it as a filler around the pavers. And the result was, it almost looked like Mexican glass because it had all these sparkling qualities to it. There are a number of purposes that you can use that glass for. And what it does is it prevents that glass from going into the landfill. Because in Lake Chelan, they're no longer recycling it. This is going to happen in our valley as well. It's going to come to an end. We are also going to have to decide what we're going to do with that glass. We need to come up with a solution. I don't believe that this is necessarily a service to others, but it's a service to planet Earth, because we cannot continue to go down this road throwing glass into the landfills where it doesn't decompose. It's something that we can reuse for a variety of purposes, and I hope that this happens sooner than later. Thank you, Mr. Tabletop Master.
Thank you. Great answer. Pat, do you think it would be kind of an odd thing to serve everyone at a Thanksgiving table as opposed to just passing the bowls around the table?
I don't think that would be an odd thing at all, because that's the way it was always done in my family Thanksgiving dinners. Whether it was mommy serving or whether it was my grandmother passing stuff around, you got to think about the table has the beautiful lace tablecloth and the crystal and the good china and the sterling silver. I don't think it's always that way anymore, but that's how it was when I was growing up. So I think that there's something more tasteful about being served. It's also another way of giving. You know, if someone offers you something, then they're giving you a gift, which is a whole lot different than somebody passing it around the table. So I like the idea of someone serving, and it might, to make it more democratic, you can have someone who serves the turkey and the elements of the main course, and you could have someone in charge of serving the pumpkin pie and have someone in charge of serving the champagne or wine that you're going to have with your meal. It's a way of sharing that's a little different from, when I think of passing, it makes me think of passing the buck. And passing the buck is not to conflate the two because they're a little different. But the reality is, I don't go for the passing thing. I like the serving as a gift to another person. Thank you.
Yeah. Very good.
You can ask a question.
I really only have one other question here. I have to say that when I lived in Leavenworth and I was single, I got into French cooking and just a lot of different culinary growth in my world, and I love to have people over. I have 12 or 14 people, and I had an authoritarian rule in my house. I would prepare these meals, and I particularly stuffed pork chops are amazing. I made everybody's plate and said, "Here it is, come and get it." And of course, the downside to that was my stuffed pork chops were 2-man pork chops. People were looking at it going like, you want me to eat all that? I said, "Yes, take your plate, have at it. I've got a dog." In this country, again, to go back to a contrarian kind of a contentious sort of question, a lot of people feel that our peace officers are overpowered and not truly serving our public in the best manner and should be retooled, defunded as part of that definition. What do you think about all of that? Is it a reality like that those who serve our communities should be reeled in?
Thank you, Steve. That is an interesting question and a timely one as well. The simple fact is, if you give somebody a gun and give them the power to use it, there are some of them who will use it. And that happens in this country far more frequently than in any other modern Western democracy. You have to go to places like Nicaragua to find the level of police violence that we have here. Now, whether the cops should be defunded, of course, that's an absurd idea. Nobody in the real world wants to do that at all, simply because who would you call if somebody ripped off your car? But can the police be retrained? Probably so, but it might be better, rather than trying to retrain them, is to think a little bit about what we want them to do. Right now, if there's, say, a drunk yelling out in the street, you call the cops. Well, the police are not really trained to deal with alcoholics, and in any event, it's a waste of their particular skills, which involve fighting crime and whatnot. So why not send some type of social service person to deal with that? The same is true with lots and lots of police calls. I think it was on King TV a couple of weeks ago. The chief of police was talking about this issue. It's a big one in Seattle. And he mentioned that nearly half of the calls they get are not really police matters. They don't deal with crimes. They deal with people who are in big trouble for one reason or another. Lots of homelessness, alcohol, and whatnot. So if I had a magic wand, what I would do would be to divide those functions in half. Let the trained police officers deal with actual crimes, and send social services people to deal with those who are in need in one way or another.
Thank you, Lloyd. Your questions are all well researched and full of content. That's tonight's table topics. Wasn't that fun?
Yes, it was.
The meeting to Mr. Kiddow.
Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Master. I, in turn, would like to turn the meeting over to our general evaluator. Please welcome back to the podium, Pat Whitfield.
Thank you. And now we'll hear from Lloyd, who just stepped away. He's going to come back and give his evaluation of Jackie's speech. Lloyd.
Thank you, Pat. This was an interesting speech, Jackie. As I said earlier, I don't believe anybody in this group has done this particular project. It was interesting to see how it could be done. When I read the purpose statement and the notes for the evaluator on the little form, it struck me there were lots of different ways this could have been done. You chose what I think is a pretty good one and one that played to your strengths. You excelled at relating your personal anecdotes. Your speech was primarily a set of little short vignettes, anecdotes that you wove into the whole, which was to reaffirm what they asserted in the top, and that is that your cultural identity does impact other people's perceptions of you. I think you did that extremely well. The little anecdotes or vignettes or whatever you want to call them were really well conceived. They fit, they were short, they had impact. Thought that was really well done. The other thing that you really excelled at were gestures, facial expression, vocal variety, which you usually excel at. The one thing that was missing, of course, is movement, but because of Zoom, there's no way to do that. Normally, you use a lot of the room when you're speaking in an in-person room. But I thought especially your gestures were done well. There's a trap that is really easy to get into when you're gesturing, and that is letting them get in front of your face. And you didn't do that. You always work on the sides of your face. There are two reasons that's bad, obviously. One of them is it's distracting to have somebody's hand come up in front of his or her face, but also it breaks the psychological connection between the speaker and the audience, and that's a bad thing. You got to maintain that connection. You handle that, I thought, really well. What might you want to work on? As I was listening to your speech, it struck me that you were using the word culture in a different way than I've learned it. Culture in a sociological sense is the sum total of the artifacts in society. And you were using it more like individual background, which worked. I mean, it fits the purpose of the speech and it transmitted your message very clearly. But then I got to thinking, well, on the other hand, do you want to have a more formal academic approach? And I don't think so. I think that it just wouldn't have fit you very well. You're better at the personal type of speaking, the anecdote type of speaking. All in all, I thought your speech exactly fit the assignment. I thought it was interesting to listen to and very well presented. Good job.
The ticking clock was Christina's hands tonight, and you have to compliment her on her creative way of using a sheet of white paper as a backdrop for those pens. You could actually see them. I hope that, Jackie, you found that as helpful as it looked from where I was sitting. Okay, Christina, please share with us how we handled our time.
Thank you, Pat. I'm going down here so it doesn't look like you're looking at my nose quite so much. It's driving me crazy. Okay. Jackie's speech was 7 minutes, 37 seconds. Lloyd's evaluation, 2 minutes, 43 seconds. For table topics, Vicki, 1:22. Barbara, 2 minutes even. Eric, 1:29. Kathleen, 2:15. Rob, 2:28. Pat, 1:45. And Lloyd, 1:52. Thank you.
And now we have Kathleen, who is our grammarian and is going to share with us the use of the word of the day and use of language and all those other wonderful elements of language that makes a very good speaker. So Kathleen, it is your moment.
General Evaluator. I had to have a sidebar with my GE here on one of these questions. Word of the day, going to read my notes from a long way away here. I heard Pat use it twice. I heard Eric use it twice. I used it once. Steve, you used it once, did you not? I think you did. Once. He's going to take credit when we did enough. Did I miss anyone? I was losing my concentration. In terms of what people had to say, there were some pretty interesting things. I loved Barbara's comment that she got the hard question again. We'll give you the easy one next week. Steve, I caught your reference to serving to a tennis racket. I thought that was very good. It took a while for everyone to catch up. Eric, I like your comment. It's conflated because I give both my time and money, which was a good statement and very well illustrated definition of the word. Rob, you had a reference to less fortunate than myself. This is where I had to have my sidebar. It would be less fortunate than I. Pat, I loved your description of the table and the waste tablecloth. Your reference to making it more democratic by serving and giving everyone a bowl. You think that everything was political because then Steve got up and talked about the authoritarian rule in his home. It was a very political night. Ending with Lloyd saying, if you give a gun and power to use it, it gets used. And a reference to fighting crime and whatnot. Like the use of the term whatnot. That's what I have for you, Madam General Evaluator.
Now Eric will tell us how we have sinned. Very interesting to hear what he has to say about that. All penitence was.
Thank you. I don't know if it's not very much. You're getting much better. You get 3 I's, 1 1 and, well, and so, and repetition, I. Steve, you have a lot of words. You started one sentence with and one with so. I didn't do clean. Good job. Lloyd, you had 9 I's, 2 ands, 1 well, 2 buts, 1 so, 1 you know, and I mean. Used I mean. So you went a variety of words. Rob, you did 2 sentences with and that you were good.
Oh, but I also have myself, so.
Yeah.
Did I steal your thunder?
Kathleen talked about that. Pat, you started 1 sentence with and, but, and 3 was so. You had you know. Christina, you were clean. I had 1 and repetition. It's. Vicky had 1 4 started sentence twice with and. You conflated an and an which is hard to do. I was impressed. Jackie, lots of words. Start 1 sentence with and. Kathleen, lots of words. Start 1 sentence with and. Other than that, that's my report. Thank you, Mr.
So my job is to evaluate the meeting as a whole. I really appreciated Jackie's approach to her topic because of my perspective as somebody who is an academic who has worked on the scholarly side of intercultural understanding or cultural understanding. I like the way that she was able to personalize it with her series of vignettes. I know that that word has already been used, but it made sense the way that she did it. She had a couple of interesting phrases. The Seattle freeze. I guess I had never heard this term, the Seattle freeze. And I never thought that the people at the airport were unfriendly. I mean, I just got back from San Diego last weekend, and I will say that the airport was like a zoo. Cattle call at feeding time. I've never seen so many people in the airport, and it wasn't fun, but they didn't seem to be grumpy. Everybody just seemed to be moving on to wherever it was that they were going. I loved her statement about the Starbucks are like national churches. Yeah, here in Washington, I guess Starbucks would be like national churches, but it was intriguing and gives a lot of personal elements of the early steps in intercultural understanding. You know, they say the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and to understand others who are different from oneself, you've got to make that initial contact and then have the exchange and see how you grow from it. The table topics were really thought-provoking and stimulating. They were very challenging to think about, to come up with a good, thoughtful response that was meaningful for every one of them. They were thought-provoking, significant, and meaningful. Other than that, yeah, I thought fighting with this, I shouldn't say fighting with this technology, working with this technology is rather interesting. It's kind of scary because I think it's the way I'm going to be teaching my classes this fall at the college. And I've only done a one-on-one so far. So if this is what it's like, I guess I better learn how to look right into the camera instead of up. But you know, you can teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm an old dog, so I guess I'm learning some new tricks. All in all, it was well done. Interesting evening. Thank you so much. Oh, and I turned it over to the president. I'm sorry.
It was comfortable. But yes, I will agree. Overall, it was a wonderful meeting, and I want to turn it over to the Vice President of Education for any announcements.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to make one other observation that I think we kind of glossed over, and that is when we have our Christmas party, I know that I want Steve to make pork chops. How everybody else feels about that. That sounds really interesting and delicious to me. One of the things that we haven't been doing is we haven't been voting. Of course, this is just the second week that we've been in person, voting for the speaker of the evening. I know that, Eric, we're going to probably get the information or get the documentation from the church, and so we'll probably have the slips so that we can do the voting. We may not get to that tonight. To me, there was a clear winner if we were to vote on the speaker of the evening. However, we'll defer that until maybe next week unless anyone else has an opinion. Yes, sir.
I called the church. The update is that in our room, they're only allowing 6 people. So that's out. And they were very apologetic. We're trying to find other space in the church for us, but it's out as of right now. We can go in and get our supplies anytime. I'll call and see because they have certain hours. Because she said, even if it's after those hours, if you give me time, you're going to be there. So they're very accommodating. So we will have some supplies next Monday.
So I'm not sure if everybody heard that, but we will have supplies from the church next week. So we'll be able to do this properly next week. So we'll have more at the meeting next Monday. But what I'm really excited about is turning this over to Lloyd Smith, who has got some presentations. Lloyd?
As you old timers know, there once was a day when you got an educational award, Toastmasters International would actually mail you a certificate. They don't do that anymore. They've made it much more efficient by making us print our own. And we have a package of certificate type paper. And so I've been printing these up all along for the last 16 months. And so we have a few of them to give out here. First of all, Kathleen, we have 3 or 4 of them from the path you've been working on. Vicki, we have several for you. The next time we see you, we'll give you those. There's a stack for me. Keep those. Jackie, we have a bunch for you because you've motored your way through about 3 paths pretty quickly. So next time you're in town, we will give you those. Mary has some, and Mr. Steve Schwinn has got. Wake up, Steve. Yeah, right. Okay, anyway, it's better to, give them out one at a time. It will take about a half hour, so maybe not. That's great.
Thank you.
Yes.
I do know that I owe a number of you who have done completed things in your pathways that I need to go in and make sure that that's updated, because you may have a different designation behind your name. So I need to make sure that those are updated, and I will get to those very quickly. Yes, Eric.
What is the update on this room? Is this a temporary situation or?
The question was, what is the update on this room? Take it away, Barbara.
So for the technology, I have something called an owl on order, which is both a speaking, it's what the Pybus uses. That's where we got the idea from. So that's on order. Hopefully it'll be here by next week. Fingers crossed. I think the Wi-Fi went down a little bit better. We did put an additional Wi-Fi router in there. But this room, we can use it as much as we want to. Next week I am gone, so I will have to put the room in charge. You in charge.
We're gonna just go back to Zoom. Is it okay?
You guys can use the room. It just-
Thank you. Well, I guess we'll have to decide if we just want to use Zoom or if we still want to meet in person next week.
Are you up for?
I'm up for doing this. Absolutely. Okay. All right. So we will be meeting in person. Jackie won't be meeting in person, but hopefully you'll be able to join us via Zoom, and we'll just we'll meet here like it's a regular meeting place.
Thanks for your present, Barbara.
Yeah, thank you.
And my mother worked for the library. So.
His mother was a very important part of this library, history of this library. Oh.
Anyone have anything they would like to share for the good of the order? Yes, Jackie.
I was looking forward to my feedback from everybody, but it didn't happen. Except for Pat.
Let's
And
go around the room. Starting with Kathleen, do you have any feedback for her?
The only other thing that I was going to mention in terms of all the different things that you said was I loved your phrase, and I think this was right. I'm going to have a lion. Is that what it was?
A lion. Yes, LIE-IN.
Is that like taking a nap? What is that?
Yeah, it's either taking a nap or sleeping in.
Oh, it sounded like you were going to have a lion, like roar.
Lion.
Actually, I think I can pass because I commented on her.
You did.
Yes, you did.
her speech, so I won't take somebody else's time.
Everybody is so positive and well, they should be. You are a very excellent speaker. One thing in this speech, which was unusual, is you had a little bit of staccato. Got it going. You might look at that. Other than that, excellent.
Hello. Good pacing, good organization, great flow from story to story, which is hard to do sometimes. The transitions can be difficult. You handled that very well. I especially liked your pacing tonight. You seemed calm and grounded. It just was a very pleasant pace for listening. Thank you.
I think it was a great speech as well. And I also agree with others, great pacing. It was easy to follow. It was a good topic for you. So you could just really tell you could add your personal touch to it. And I always appreciate hearing your personal stories added to your speeches. What I would like to know is how the memorial went, your speech. Did that go? It was just, okay. All right, I'll leave it.
Look at my Facebook for updates. There's a reason I'm in the UK.
I thought you did a really nice job, as you usually do. presence up there is what I always dwell on. You are just comfortable and natural. It felt like a conversation with a good friend going on up there. Your content and your delivery holds the audience firmly in place. Squirrel might have gone by. I'm not quite sure what happened. I lost a little traction there. I kind of lost the purpose and point of your speech. It's more than likely just me. I think Eric's comment about the staccato kind of was lulling a little bit for me. But it was a great speech. The part that I stayed with you on was spot on. Good job.
You've forgotten that I already did.
So Jackie, I apologize. At one point in your speech, I had to go to the loo, so I might have missed like a minute of your speech, but what I heard was excellent. You do such a fantastic job. You are a natural. It's always a pleasure to listen to you. So I look forward to more and more of your speeches. And the only other thing I want to ask, your completion certificates, would you like me to send them somewhere for you, send them to your parents' house, or how would you like me to get those to you? And you don't have to tell me now. We can just send an email and you can let me know. But another job well done. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. I think that's going to do it. Let's be back here again next week. Have a great week.
Bye.
Bye.